Hello and welcome to How to Pass Accountancy Exams, what I call the technique method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through how to pass. I'm going to explain what the examiner is testing and why, and I'm going to explain how the examiner will test it. And I'm going to give you then the required approach. So if you're thinking, I'm not getting this, it's just all too hard, this is really hard maths, why am I not going in that, I just can't do it. The reason actually is not because there's something fundamentally wrong in terms of your brain power or your level of intelligence. The reason why is because you're not applying fundamental accounting technique. And I'll explain you what the examiner is trying to do and why. Right, it's not really working for you if that's the case. So we're in an exam and we've been given some information in a question and we've been asked to give us an answer, and you're going to be tempted to take the information and immediately start producing the answer. So we got some information, so let's say we're given some information on some wages numbers, and please produce for me the wages journals, and you're going to start cranking out and producing wages journals. And what's going to happen? Well, you're probably going to get bitten by some nasty crocodiles that are sitting in that pond because the examiner has laid a whole series of traps if you try and shortcut the examiner to make sure that you put some errors in. So in this instance, I've decided I'm going to put the employers and the employees' national insurance and the employees and the employers' pension contributions next to one another because there's only one letter different between them. I think you'll get one of those wrong and mix it up if you just try and go straight to the journals. I'm going to give you them in orders as well. So I'm going to put I'm going to start with something that is below employee deductions, and I'm going to switch to employer contribution. Then I'm going to put back to a deduction and go to employer's expense and that kind of thing. I'm going to mess that order up a bit as well, and I'm going to mess with your head. So that your mental arithmetic goes completely awry and you just get the answer wrong. You've also got nothing to back up to see whether you were right or wrong, so you can't check your work properly, and you either check it but you're wasting your time, or you don't check it and you get it wrong. So that's what the approach that I'm going to take as the examiner. So what's the impact of that approach? Well, you're going to fall into the examiner's traps and you're going to get things wrong. It's going to be way more stressful as well. And you're actually having to sort of think, and there's some hard maths going on with some algebra all over the place. You're keeping numbers, 3 or 4 numbers in your head at once, and that's really hard, especially under the exam techniques as well, which is really unpleasant. Not quite sure why you'd want to make things difficult, but it's going to be very unpleasant. So if you find you're getting very stressed in these questions as well, this is the reason why as well. You're not applying some fundamental techniques, and as a consequence it's just becoming very, very hard. And you'll actually probably finish really quickly. So you've been in an exam for an hour and a half and you'll have this done in half an hour, and you'll wonder why, what's going on there, and the reason why is because you've actually missed out half the work that you should have really been doing, and ultimately this is a fail. Now, your maths and your algebra ability might carry you through level 2 and maybe a little bit into level 3, but eventually you'll come to a point where the requirements are so long and so complicated, and then in real life they become so long and so complicated that you'll fail. And what I would say as well is, for those of you doing the exams, then actually going and doing the job, especially at professional level, it's much harder in real life. There's a lot more numbers and there's a lot more to get wrong. You have more time, so that helps. But it certainly is. Don't be thinking that this is just a hard test that doesn't reflect reality. No, it's actually, this will get harder when you get to the job. So this is a fail. And what is the lesson that's really being taught to you by the examiner? And the lesson is that there are no shortcuts in accountancy. Why is that? Well, because you're going to come and work for me as a finance director, or you're going to work for somebody that's similar to me, and if you start making shortcuts, then you're going to mess up my finance system. So I don't want the examiner to provide people who are like that. I want the examiner to weed those people out for me. So I want a methodical approach. So there's no shortcuts. There's just solid fundamentals, solid technique, as I call them. So what's the approach really that we should be taking? Well, we're in the exam and we've got the exam information, and at point A, what we're now thinking is, what is this question? what is the technique that I am supposed to apply. So in our wages method in here, the technique that I was supposed to apply was first to put a table and put all of my wages information in there. I would then highlight that the examiner quite cleverly has put has given me two items which are missing. Probably given me one of the items, so one of total cost of the employer, one of it'll be either total cost of the employer, gross pay, or net wages. I'll only be given one of those. But I've got the other deductions and I've got the employer's costs, so I can work out the other two if I put it into a table neatly. I'll also see, well done, examiner. You know, you've messed around with the employer costs and the employee deductions, but that's okay because I've just sorted them in my table into a nice bit of order. Only then do I write the journals out and I complete that. And then, though, I decide to go and do a wages control account to check that my answer was right, and that was how I checked my question. And if my wages control account's balanced, then I was right. So I've got my point A when I'm reading the information is, what is the technique that I'm applying? I then apply the technique, and you're going to see a number of steps in each of the techniques, which I'm going to provide you on all the videos coming up. And then my answer comes out of my techniques. So I don't actually think about the answer, I just do the technique and the answer becomes available to me. And that is what accountancy is. It's not a question of a thinking test and a test of mental arithmetic, it's a question of structure and application. So why is that the case? Well, I want to see whether you're methodical. I want to see whether you're going to follow a structure within my finance department or whether you're going to mess it up. And is accuracy important to you? If those three things aren't important to you, well, the way in which the examiner is approaching it means that you will jump straight to the answer, you will get it wrong, and you'll fail, and as a consequence I won't have to fix your work in a real life example. So that's really what we're trying to achieve. So I thought that I had just a bit of a test of all the videos that we've got coming up within this playlist on bookkeeping controls, and I've said, well, is there a technique attached to each one? Payment methods is just a memory test. You know, check that out. Pretty reasonably simple question, but it is just a memory test. That's not a technique on there. But right, bank reconciliations. Well, yeah, we definitely got 4 steps to the bank reconciliations in here. Tick off all the items in the cash book and the bank statement at the start. Reconcile our brought forward balances. Will you miss out that step in there though and leave an item in the bank statement that should also have been ticked off? I then put all the missing items in the bank statement into the cash book, recalculate my cash book, and only then do I do my bank reconciliation of adding my outstanding lodgements to my bank statement figure and taking off my unpresented checks. Do my figures then balance? Okay, so there was definitely a step there. Purchase sales and VAT reconciliations. This one's definitely one where there's a technique that people don't do, and they try and do this sort of a mental arithmetic test. I've got 2 figures. I've got a purchase ledger control account, and I've got a sales purchase ledger figure. Now they're different, and so and then I give them scenarios, and all these scenarios. One of the reasons why this difference might have occurred. I'm trying to see whether you'll try this with some kind of algebra. And if you do, you'll get it wrong, or it'll be very stressful. You might get it right, you might get it wrong. 50-50 chance, you never know. But what should you do? Well, you actually put both figures into 2 T accounts to start with. You work out what the journals are set out in the scenario. You reverse those journals from your T accounts, and then you work out whether the answer, whether the T accounts are now the same. If they're now the same, that was the reason. If they're not the same, that wasn't the reason. Very much a structure there, which people just don't seem to do. Age debts, well, we got some underlying fundamentals of cash being better in our bank account than theirs. We got some general approach really of being reasonable, and we need to get the money in. Apply those 2, yeah, definite structure there. But that gives us also something that what we've had here, which is balance. So there is a technique here which is balance between these 2 items here. The need to be reasonable, recovering our debts, but also the need to get the money in. And that is the technique that's being required. In wages control, I've already taken you through wages control, very much a technique approach really in there. I think in the book that we use here, the Osborne's book one, there is no technique provided, and that's why people just find this incredibly hard. I've given you the technique of doing it, and then you won't go wrong with that. Preparing a journal, even to preparing journals. I'm saying first of all, decide whether this thing is an asset, a liability or equity. An asset going up is a debit, an asset going down is a credit, a liability or equity going up is a credit, and a liability or equity going down is a debit. Then you prepare your journals, does it balance? That's it. So you can see very much methodical approach here. And correcting journals. Yeah, right, I classify my error first. So once I've classified my error, then I decide, right, omission, error of omission, I'm going to add in the journal. Error of commission, I'm going to change the subsidiary ledger. And a principal reversing or compensating error, well, I'm going to reverse out the original journal and I'm going to put in the new one. I'm not going to put in some net figure and mess about in there. Then I'm going to post it to the suspense account, see if it clears. Posting the suspense account, again, I'm back into T accounts here. I'm posting the journals to the T accounts and then redoing the trial balance. And does the suspense accounts clear the trial balance? Right, so this is, I've gone through and I've given you the method. Now, do I do this in real life? Let me give you some background then. I'm a chartered accountant and have been qualified now for 21 years. I was top of my district and subsequently I did the corporate finance exams after going into corporate finance and I was second in the country in those exams. Do I try and do some amazing, because I'm pretty good at accountancy by now, got a lot in my head, do I try and shortcut anything? No. You'll see when I give you examples of the practice assignments, I'm going through this technique in detail and I do exactly the same thing as I would have done 21 years ago with exactly the same T accounts and exactly the same approach and the same methodical approach there, with nothing different and no shortcuts. Over 21 years of professional accountancy, I still have not created a set of shortcuts. In fact, I revel in the detail, the methodicalness of it. You need to do that as well. You will not find a way of doing this quicker that will definitely be right. So, how to pass then? What was the examiner testing? The examiner's testing to see whether you'll jump, and the examiner's there fishing away and seeing whether I'll give you some information and I'll give you the requirements. Will you try and jump to it straight away and I can get you to make mistakes, or will you apply some fundamental technique? How are they going to test it? Well, yeah, I'm not going to give you the techniques in the middle there though. I'm going to give you a few bits of information missing that you could create if you applied some technique in there. I'm going to see whether you're neat in terms of using your T accounts and the way in which you lay out your journals. You'll note as well in the videos I'm very pernickety about how journals are laid out. I'll even put little indentations for my credits and things like that. That neatness is something that you've got to get. What I would say here as well in terms of exam technique in the exam. We all love the planet and we all love the trees and what have you, but in the exam you need the paper, you need to do your workings, and you need to be neat and lay things out. Do not put them in scrabbly messes. Make sure your numbers are nicely laid out. Neatness is important, and so that is a thing. Just being methodical. You don't have to have the world's wonderfulest handwriting, but you just have to lay your data out, don't squash it together, and make sure you're doing your workings as you're going through. You'll probably be short of paper when you're in the exam. Just put your hand up early and get more paper. Is the main thing. My hand would usually go up if, let's say, I'm in a 3-hour lesson, 3-hour exam. Mine would probably go up after the first hour, and I get tutted at, but I still got my paper and they're still kicked up, so that's how it works. And what is the required approach? Look, all you're going to do is just look at the question, look at the information, right? What is the technique? I'm going to take you through in the videos the technique that's required for the bookkeeping controls you apply it, and that's all that's required. It takes all of the thinking and the stress out of it, and we just now have a nice easy time of it going through, knowing that we'll pass. And achieve that. So hopefully that's the approach. Hopefully you're going to follow this advice really, and you'll pass and do well. I've produced all the videos for you to be able to do it. Good luck, and hope you succeed. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye bye.